cell phone and took a picture of it before walking off.
I'm still waiting on that other footage because I want to use it when Leanne and Josh are talking about it, right? So I'm gonna show the incident as they are talking about it. So any instance that we have on camera, I'm gonna use it, right? And why? I'm gonna tell you now. So in recent years, the pride flag displayed at First Congregational Church in downtown Colorado Springs has been repeatedly torn down. 4 times in 6 months alone. Each time, what remains is a broken bungee cord and an empty metal hoop where the banner once hung. The fabric disappears, the absence lingers. Colorado Springs contains many churches. It has many pride symbols. Stickers on coffee shops, windows, bookstores, like we have a pride flag right at Poor Richards, right?
Yes.
And it's not like this place is the only place that has a pride flag on it. Yet this particular flag on this particular church continues to be targeted. Question, why this one? Why here? Why not even the other inclusion flag right next to it? In this talk, I approached that question from a social semiotic perspective. Science of the science. I've been trained partly as a linguistic anthropologist and semiotician. Rather than treating the flag as a passive symbol, a static sign that simply represents LGBTQ inclusion, I suggest that the flag is doing something more active. It is intervening in important debates in the city by just hanging here. It reorganizes the landscape of moral and religious authority in the city. So question is how? The pride flag at First Congregational does not merely signal welcome. It gathers layered histories of faith, sexuality, and power into a single visible object. Over time, it comes to stand in for larger struggles over who belongs where, whose morality counts, and who gets to claim public space, not just in Colorado Springs, but in the United States of America. When we situate these acts of vandalism alongside the everyday experiences of LGBTQ plus people in this city, experiences shaped by military presence, evangelical institutions, and a long history of Christian political organizing, it becomes clearer why such a small piece of fabric carries such oversized meaning. So the second part is the specificity of the location, which matters a lot. So First Congregational is not simply any congregation. Founded in 1874, it's one of the oldest churches in Colorado Springs, and it's housed right now in this beautiful 1889 stone building. It is part of the United Church of Christ, a denomination with a long public record of LGBTQ plus affirmation. The United Church of Christ began advocating for LGBTQ plus civil rights in 1969. It ordained the first openly gay mainline Protestant minister in 1972, the same year that actually the first LGBTQ flag was designed. This is the same year. And it declared itself open and affirming in 1985. It supported marriage equality in 2005, which is almost 10 years before it was nationally recognized by law, right? So it was always ahead of the curve. These are not recent concessions. They are theological commitments embedded in denominational history. At First Congregational, the designation open and affirming, just peace, and creation justice are not decorative labels. They are doctrinal positions. They are public claims about how Christianity ought to be practiced and understood. The banner that reads, "A just world for all," is not ornamental branding. It is material theology. It is faith made visible. So when the pride flag is torn down, something more than fabric is removed from the church. What is being contested is not merely a sign of inclusion. What is being contested is a theological articulation of Christianity itself. So, a flag on a church is not the same as a flag on a lamppost. want to talk about this incident in terms of social semiotics or science of the signs, a pride flag on a lamppost marks civic inclusion. It signals that the municipality recognizes LGBTQ residents as part of the civic body. It speaks in the language of governance and public policy. A pride flag on a church does something different. Churches claim moral authority. They do not simply participate in public life. They define virtue within it. They shape the boundaries of sin and righteousness, legitimacy and deviance, salvation and exclusion. So it's not just, if you're a believer, it's not just this mortal world and mortal life you're thinking about or negotiating over. It's like you or your life for all eternity. In Colorado Springs, a city nationally recognized as an evangelical hub and home to ministers such as ministries or organizations such as Focus on the Family, Christianity is not merely a private belief system. It is a structuring force in civic identity. Evangelical theology has historically functioned as a moral regulator of public discourse here. So in Colorado Springs, within dominant evangelical frameworks, LGBTQ affirmation is often treated not as a secondary disagreement, but as a fundamental rupture. I actually was listening to one of the conservative advocates in Carey Chapel. I gained access to a tape that was not supposed to be heard by me. He was talking in a sort of safer space, right? Imagine someone tapes me here and they said, I am fine with it. I don't want to name names, but they said that the gay militant movement is the most fundamental and the most important front of the struggle, right? The same-sex marriage and the gay militant movement. So for them, this is not just like a secondary thought. This is the most important issue on the line here. And so doctrines of gender complementarity, like how the gender roles are supposed to be, biblical literalism, and sexual ethics are understood as core commitments, not secondary thoughts, right? So to affirm queer relationships is frequently framed as a rejection of the scriptural authority itself. In that context, the pride flag at First Congregational does something destabilizing. It collapses an assumed opposition of queer versus Christian. And it asserts that queer life is not external to Christian morality. It is articulated through it. That is a far more radical claim than civic tolerance. So on one level here, to summarize this part here, is that evangelicals see this as the most important issue, right? That's one level, on a public level, right? But then the semiotic, there is another layer, which is the semiotic intervention. From a social semiotic perspective, signs do not simply reflect reality. They also shape it. Because people, when they see signs, they react to it in a certain way, right? So if an LGBTQ plus member sees the sign, they interpret it in a certain way, right? They might actually want to swing by and see what's going on at this church. Are they more inclusive in the sense that, do I count as, can I fully participate in this church, right? It's not just a question of you can come and sit here and we're just gonna let you do that. Participation has different layers, right? So it's not just a question of, oh, now we are okay with gay people, lesbians, or queer people, just come sit here. Are they allowed to fully participate in the life of the church? That's the question. So the pride flag at First Congregational reorganizes the moral legibility of Christianity in Colorado Springs. It makes visible a form of Christian belonging that some experience as illegitimate or threatening. Not because it is incoherent, but because it disrupts an established hierarchy, right?
Right.
So for decades, evangelical Christianity in this city has operated as the default articulation of real Christianity. Other forms, progressive, ecumenical, justice-oriented, often exist quietly, without claiming centrality or without claiming space. The pride flag changes that. It announces presence, it claims authority, it refuses marginality. In doing so, it forces a confrontation. Who defines Christianity? Who gets to speak for God? Who decides which moral framework governs public life itself? Now, we get to vandalism as counter-semiotic practice. So it is tempting to treat the repeated tearing down of the flag as a simple solitary hatred or act of aggression, irrational rage. While hostility toward LGBTQ plus inclusion may animate these acts, stopping there forecloses deeper analysis. If we instead understand vandalism as counter-semiotic practice, a different picture emerges. By removing the flag, the perpetrator is not only destroying property, they are attempting to undo a claim, they are reasserting a boundary. The articulation of Christianity does not belong here. The act becomes a form of re-semiotition, like reassigning meaning to signs, right? So by tearing down the objects, right, they are reasserting boundaries and reassigning meaning or reassigning order to meaning, right? So the act becomes a form of re-semiotization, a material attempt to restore an older moral order in which Christianity and queerness are mutually exclusive. The broken cord and empty hoop are not merely remnants of damage. They are efforts to visually reestablish a different landscape, one in which the category Christian is purified of LGBTQ plus affirmation. Seen this way, vandalism becomes a message, a counterclaim. This sign is illegitimate, this moral order is wrong, this theology does not or cannot stand. So, everyday life and embodied stakes. To understand why this matters, we must situate the flag within lived experience. Colorado Springs is home to military families, evangelical institutions, conservative Christian networks. For many LGBTQ residents, especially those raised in conservative churches, especially younger people who still depend on their families for their livelihoods, for a place to live, for support, moral support, material support, right? This is like, especially those raised in conservative churches, religion has not been a neutral domain, right? It has been a site of discipline, exclusion, and a spiritual conflict. I have heard from various interlocutors that they know youth, LGBTQ youth here, who choose to keep quiet, right, out of fear of losing their community, their friends, right? So it's not even like the fear, the more real fear of what if my family just throw me on the street, which is real, happened to people here, but it's just like out of a fear of losing their friends and community if they say that they do not agree. And also, I was talking to a lesbian couple. One of them grew up going to New Life, and at the time she didn't know that she's queer. She even married a man, and that man tragically dies. And then after she gets over her grief, which by the way took her about a decade, she falls in love with a woman, and they get married, and now they're happily living together in Colorado Springs. And I was interviewing them, and Becca thinks, okay, I still go to New Life on some special occasions, and they never tried to kick me out of the church. And then instantly her partner interjects, and she's like, but do you think they would marry us? Do you think they would recognize us for who we are and actually say that they're fine with it? Yeah, we are. They know we are together, and we go and sit there, and they're not gonna tell us to leave. But participation and affirmation and acknowledgement has different levels, right? Would they acknowledge us openly? No. Would we, God forbid, would you be able to be ordained? Hell no.
Right.
And I was like, would you say this in front of the camera? And she was like, no. Like, because they're still, like, I understand, like, their mother is still like an evangelical, right? And even though she's like more affirming compared to a generation before, they would still not want to be in the film or talk about it openly, right?
Right.
So this is what we're talking about. Many queer adults in this city describe experience of being told they could not be loved but not affirmed, welcome but not married, present but not fully recognized. In that context, a pride flag on a church does not merely signal tolerance. It signals repair, full inclusion, full participation. It offers a different narrative that faith and queerness are not mutually exclusive, that exile is not the only option, that Christian belonging need not require self-erasure. For someone walking downtown who has internalized decades of messaging that Christianity rejects them, this banner is actively intervening and saying something different. The removal of the flag then is not abstract. It is like it aims to reassert meaning, reassert the older order, right? That if you're queer, do not think you can still openly practice Christianity. You need to hush one of them, right? You can't just fully embrace both.
Right.
So national circulation. So this is definitely not a local story. Like right now, I'm like in contact with Fox News to get one of they interviewed Emily Bond here. So it was national news, and I'm like getting that footage to use it in the film. So Colorado Springs is kind of a national symbol at this point. And it always circulates in national debates about religion and politics. The image of a pride flag repeatedly torn down at a historic downtown church circulates far beyond this building, far beyond this locale. Through news coverage, social media, activist networks, the flag becomes a condensed sign of broader culture wars, religious freedom versus LGBTQ rights, scriptural authority versus interpretive flexibility, tradition versus transformation, or it stands in for the unresolved tension between two competing moral orders within American Christianity. Its visibility exceeds its physical dimension. And finally, the metapragmatic provocation. So the pride flag here is not only referential, like referring to an idea, it is metapragmatic. It is providing commentary on it. It comments on the terms of the debate itself. It says the category Christian is not closed. It is contested and it's open for interpretation always. It refuses the idea that evangelical theology functions as the sole arbiter of public virtue, and it insists that Christianity can be justice-oriental, ecumenical, and affirming without ceasing to be Christian. That claim destabilizes an entire semiotic hierarchy. A pride flag on a lamppost participates in municipal recognition. A pride flag on a church then contests the authority to define God, right? And that's why it repeatedly becomes targeted. The repetition and the force of sign. If the flag were insignificant, it would not need to be removed repeatedly. And also, if the flag was indicating to a sort of meaning that is kind of uncontested, like Black Lives Matter,
Right.
why that doesn't get targeted? Because Black people's inclusion, full inclusion in the church, it's at this point, it's not something of a contestation, right?
Most of the time.
Most
Depending
of-
on where you
Most
are.
of the time, but it's not as big of a deal breaker, right?
Apparently.
It's not.
Yes.
Why? Because here, the very definition of family is on the line.
Yes.
This is why it becomes such a kind of, it just kind of incites violence, it incites action, because it is proposing to define not just who belongs in a Christian church, but who can have family, as the most important political unit, the most important social unit, right? Because it's like in class, I always tell my students, the one institution that is most influential in society and no one ever thinks about it as an institution is matrimony, is family, right? Because that is the most formative social unit, cultural unit, political unit, right? And this is why this is so threatening to people who think a family can only be a man and a woman, a male and a female, exclusively married to one another and raising their children, right? That is their definition. And this not only threatens faith and hierarchies of faith and Christian theology, but also the very definition of who counts as a family, right, in public sphere. So each time it is rehung, the church reasserts its theological and public assertions. Each removal attempts to negate that claim, the cycle continues. So the unresolved contradiction, ultimately the pride flag at First Congregational materializes a contradiction the city has not resolved. Queer life that refuses exile from faith. It gathers histories of exclusion, theological debates, moral authority, and aspirations for full membership into something visible and difficult to ignore. It refuses the binary that has structured so much religious discourse here, and it says that faith and queerness are not adversaries. For some, that is liberation, for others, that is just disruption. So, the battle continues, and the repeated targeting of this banner reveals no weakness but significance. It reveals a struggle over who belongs within the category Christian, who gets to define family, and in the end, the pride flag here matters not simply because hate exists, but because it makes visible possibility that unsettles established hierarchies. And so I think it definitely is telling you it's doing some work, and that's why it keeps removed. Thank you. Now you can ask me.
Question. Other religions, what would Buddha say? Talk to me about how other religions handle this situation.
So, I'm not a Buddhist by birth. I was born a Muslim.
What do Muslims say?
Muslims, believe it or not, I don't want to okay, here's the thing. I don't want to universalize my own experience. Islam, like Christianity, is open to interpretation. I can only tell you what Islam in the context of Iran means for LGBTQ plus people. I do not know of other contexts. So I don't want to give you my own experience, personal experience in Iran, as what Islam, capital I Islam, is or is supposed to be, okay? But I know that in Iran, being gay or lesbian is illegal. So they say in Iran, very similar to evangelicals, they claim that it's in Quran. Quran never talks about, as far as I know. Do they? I don't think so. But in Iran, it is illegal. They cite Islam as the evidence of why it should be legal, right? But I think it's just the government using Islam as pretext for whatever they want to do, right? They also say that Baha'i faith cannot exist, right? They also say that the only other religions they recognize are Judaism and Christianity. I don't know, but what I know is that Islam, like Christianity, is open to interpretation, there are many Muslim countries that recognize the rights of LGBTQ people. In Iran, they do not, and they cite Quran as like authority that says LGBTQ people do not belong.
Is it because Iran is just an offshoot of Christianity?
It's not.
Oh, I thought they had the Bible.
They
Christian
had
Bible.
what?
I thought the Islam people used the Christian or the Jewish Bible. You did not
There are a
experience
lot
that?
of overlaps.
Okay.
There are a lot of overlaps, but I honestly am not an expert on Islam.
Okay. Thank you.
People of the book. We are, like,
Okay, can we go from there?
Yeah.
And then,
I just wanted to ask about, so I think before you described the people who did take the flag, I think myself and others would maybe imagine more of an aggressive, like a group of people coming and they've got a mission and they're gonna rip this flag down and then they're gonna, you know, kind of boast about it. So it was interesting to hear that it was like a dude walking his dog, right? So that was kind of interesting. And then it made me think about all the other places of worship that do have flags that are not in this particular location. Because when I drive, I believe there's I don't know the dominations of the church, but I know that there's like a flag on another church, and one church has, I use church kind of as a broad way of place to worship. They have stairs that are rainbow. And I'm kind of curious, I have kind of two thoughts. First thought is, do you know if vandalism has occurred
yes,
at those
I
churches?
actually heard from one. The sister church of this church, right?
visitor.
Yes.
Mr.
It also happens there.
Is that located here in downtown?
No, it's not.
So
further
it's
north.
kind of like Reverend Mallory Hart told me that it also happens to their church. So we know for sure that LGBTQ flags on churches are not, like they get targeted in
Right.
Colorado Springs, right?
Yeah.
And yes, I know Richard Escoman once told me like they have the pride flag at Corridors as well, right? But he told me the day that people were gathering for Charlie Kirk downtown, he was like that day we decided to take it down because we were kind of concerned that someone might attack, because there is like a congregation, let's call it a congregation, like the gathering, these like forces who think Charlie Kirk was like a good person to like mourn are gathering here, so we do not want to like tempt them to crash into like, or like hurt someone, you know, just like be safe than sorry. But yeah, but that flag has never got targeted. The only incidents I have heard in Colorado Springs are LGBTQ flags on places of worship.
Actually, Lady Fingers Letterpress, which is a business also downtown on Acacia Park, a queer business, and have multiple flags and other things in their windows. They have had numerous threats painted on their window, KKK, all kinds of horrible things that they've had to deal with. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you, after this talk, can you just give me like their
Absolutely.
their contact information?
And you might be interested in knowing as well, after the Club Q shooting, the segment 93 of the larger 2 Mile Pride flag that was created back in, like, I don't know, 1980 something, I can't remember. That segment, which is flown on the White House and after the Pulse Club shooting, was offered to Colorado Springs. It did hang on our city hall for about a week. Getting it on there was an absolute miracle, and the behind the scenes story about how that happened is remarkable.
Do you have a pen and paper?
I need to, so I am, it took a while for me to be able to develop the connections to talk to anyone from Prism. You're familiar with
Yes,
them?
very much. so.
But I'm actually interviewing them this week, this
Oh,
coming on
perfect. You
Tuesday.
should-
It's
They
in-
have information about this as well, and I'm on city council, so I was a part of that.
Oh my God! Am I interviewing you? Excuse me, what is your name?
Nancy and Jen.
Yes, I'm interviewing you.
Oh.
Oh my God, I did
Jeff
this with you.
Scholes?
Yes,
Oh, Jeff.
I'm coming to interview you.
There we go. How about that?
Now you know what are my questions, but like, I also want all the information you just
Yeah,
gave
I will
me.
be happy to share with you.
Wonderful, I wanna talk to you more.
Jim, your question? Or,
No,
whichever Jim is first.
So you mentioned the secret tape that identified LGBTQ as the point of the spear that the conservative evangelicals are going after. But I'm wondering if you could also speak to the moment we're in and whether the kind of permissive cruelty has something to do with the vandalism that is repeated. Is that somehow, because these people seem to be taking trophies, either the flag itself or a photo.
Yes,
And how does that fit into the larger dynamic?
So you're saying that, are they becoming emboldened? Of course. Like, I know for a fact that my life as like an immigrant, I can feel the hands of the state on my, in here right now. Like the multiple, I was like explaining to a friend just last week that, like, I did not know federal government existed during the Biden administration, honestly. Like, you knew what to expect. You knew the law and you knew that they are like abiding by the law, and you know that, okay, these are my rights and responsibilities. As far as I do what they're telling me to do, I'm gonna be fine. That doesn't exist anymore. And especially people who are in any way vulnerable, they inhabit a position which is either immigrant or they have to, like, you know that people who are like more vulnerable in any way, they are minorities in any way, they have to deal with their state, right? So this is an indication of the emboldened forces of exclusion in society being more active. Of course, like, I might even like double check to see if this ever happened, because I know 2024, it happened before, right? But does it have anything to do with Trump running for the second term and then winning? I want to lean towards yes, right? I want to lean towards yes.
I have a small suggestion for your film project. The word flag means something different to me than banner. And I think it's banners that have been torn off the church. But could you somehow or another call the banner a flag and then leave it at that? I don't know, I'm just kind of put off by calling it a flag when it's not really a flag on a pole. It's a banner on pillars or something.
Yeah, flag has a lot of connotation, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. I can see that. I've got a quick comment, Nooshin. Two real quick ones. Some of my most cherished memories at this church has been marching in the Pride Parade and looking at the faces of observers on the streets, people sobbing, has been very moving for me. You know, I think to your point, it sort of catalyzes the image of making church, you know, different for those people. It's very powerful. And then the second point is in D11 right now, as you know, Nancy, the school board has this year voted in a non-flag, a ban on flags.
Yes.
And it's coded language for, you know, rainbow flags. And in my son's middle school, there's a brilliant music teacher in defiance, won't take his flag down. And the school board is removing him. And it's causing a lot of trauma in that community. And I think that the time right now is very fraught with all these politics, you know. I think it's absolutely a kind of war. The tip of the spear, as Jim states. It's absolutely true. And it's happening in the school boards, it's happening in the schools. Make no mistake. You know, they're coming. And so it's up to us to really step up our vigilance, right? And don't take this one on.
Yeah. And also in the things I mentioned, it was also said that it is crucial that people who are in the churches comment on this directly, because they were complaining that they don't want to comment directly or intervene in this debate, and they feel like they should put people first, right? So if you have a people first sort of approach, you want people to feel welcome and calm, and if they really love God and they want to worship God, you shouldn't cause them to feel like unwelcome where they want to be. But they were complaining that no, this wouldn't do. We have to make them actually take a more firm stance and directly talk about that. So it has been a debate for them, maybe not for us, right? Because I don't know. It's just that I'm trying to understand how they view the situation, what they are thinking.
I think what you said is unfortunately working in some capacity, because I just recently heard from a friend that his church never was political, and in the last like 4 or 5 months they've been kind of like sliding in some of these like random political statements or mentioning somebody who's running for office, kind of like they'll be at their pancake, you know, breakfast, and then all of a sudden everything's fine, and then they'll like talk about something that feels very political, and then they sitting at the table are like, this is weird, this isn't how we normally talk. So I don't know if that's exactly correlated to what you're saying, but what you said correlates, you know, and affirms like what he's experiencing, which is like, his church has never been political, and now all of a sudden they're saying all this political stuff. So it's kind of interesting.
The other side I don't think they believe in separation of church and state.
Yeah.
But me coming from a country that was devastated by making them one, you know, nothing destroys religion like uniting it with the state. Because every harm is gonna be done to people in the name of religion, right? So they're not gonna, like people in Iran do not see Islam as a religion anymore. And it's just very hard to explain to Americans that they are not Islamophobic. They have just been traumatized in the name of Islam. So when they say things like, I hate Islam, they think what has been done to them is Islam. But it's just a certain interpretation of Islam used as pretext to do what you want, right? So I think the distinction matters. I don't think what evangelicals are saying is Christianity. I think that's their interpretation of Christianity, and they're using it as pretext to do whatever they want to do.
Just a quick thought. So you, the statement you started with was how one of the worst things for a religion is to, you know, merge it up with the state. I know obviously you're working on your video and everything like that. I don't know how well that statement merges with the rest of what you're saying, or maybe it's already stated in there. I just think it might be something worth, on your end, thinking about how or if that makes sense to include with what you're already working on.
Would you
And
say
I'll
that
be-
again?
So her statement was, and again, I'm paraphrasing and probably doing a very poor job, but something down the lines of one of the worst things for a religion is to have it merged with the state and its functionality and everything.
So I'm not gonna say that in those words, because in a film, you cannot tell people, I want you to think this when you're watching a film. Like that shouldn't be.
Okay.
But through what I show, I'm hoping people are gonna come to that conclusion. That's the more effective way of like showing people a film that this is the city of Colorado and this is all the organizing that happened and this is what impact, how people were impacted by that.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so now you make your own mind of what should be done in America, you know? But like, I wish it, a film is like, an art object is something you want people to directly experience something that they wouldn't otherwise, right? So you're giving people an experience that is gonna change their frame of reference. So by telling a specific story about Colorado Springs, I'm hoping that people come to the conclusion that maybe we should not think that we should run the country by like a very specific interpretation of Christianity, and also maybe that was like the separation of church and state was something that founders intentionally put in place because they could see that it could just destroy America the way it was supposed to be, right?
Are you getting into the various interpretations of Christianity, or like?
In the film, no.
Okay. Curious.
The story is basically mostly around Amendment 2, and the story starts from here, but then I connect these incidents to a longer history of LGBTQ rights in the city, which is Amendment 2, and we're kind of dealing with the legacy of Amendment 2, which was one of the very important struggles of 90s was same-sex marriage and domestic partnership benefits. So why I chose that, because I think that's the most important, one of the most important things for LGBTQ people is whether or not I and the way I live can be affirmed legally, socially, culturally, right? And what impact that is gonna have for my material, like materially, am I gonna be impacted by that affirmation? So I really wanted to bring into focus that words are not just words. When you speak words of hate, those words circulate. They impact law. They impact ways that are gonna be felt in someone's life. So we get to a story of a lesbian couple. One of them was a police dispatcher in Colorado Springs in the 90s. The other one was a social worker, and they really needed, they were both disabled. They needed the recognition of domestic partnership benefits, but whereas them were on board, they were recognizing them. In Colorado Springs, they were not recognized. So they had to sue the government. And here they fail, they go to Denver, they do it again and again and again. They win eventually, but one of them dies. So that tragic story, personal story, is supposed to communicate to people that these positions you hold and these words you speak come to actually impact someone's life and take away what should belong to them, right?
Yeah.
So by showing them that, I'm hoping that they're gonna like become more, I don't know, thinking about these things, maybe?
Yeah, my curiosity has always been how fascinating it is when society interprets scriptures to suit them, and especially when we interpret Old Testament scriptures that were really written for the Jews and then have been interpreted by the Jews, and then the Jews interpret them very, very differently. And I always like, yeah, us Christians are so infants, you know, because LGBTQ communities are fully recognized communities in the theocracy that is Israel. So I find it very fascinating that on this side of the ocean we think we know a thing or two, and then how that is used to harm people. So that was where I was coming from with my question.
Well, I think one of the reasons religion get deployed is because it means so much to people, right? And it's a powerful tool. That's why they use it.
Yeah, it's the same book, and we have used it to justify every morality for the past 5 million years, and so it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like with Jewish people, they have the same problem, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of
We all have
Jewish people argue that Israel, the state of Israel, is written in the Old Testament. And like, I know Jewish people who disagree. So they have the same issues, right?
Yeah.
Muslims have the same arguments over, oh, in Quran it says so and so it talks about like so and so's story of like men sleeping together and God wiping them, blah 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 blah. And some people might say, no, that has nothing to do with the law. You can't just like go ask a scripture, the literal lines of a scripture, how we should be living. Like, is there anything about like laptops in Quran? Like, did God tell me? It's just like, you know.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I just wanted to validate the layers of religious trauma that are very real for anyone in this community, and as someone who has a lot of that from just so many different experiences in different places. I've only been in Colorado for 2 years, just about, and within my community before moving to Colorado, period, I was asking, where is it safe? And Colorado Springs was not on the top of the list. And I still felt very spiritually guided here, and went against what I was being told and listened to my own spirit. And as someone with religious trauma, when I explore a church, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Is it just a rainbow flag or an inclusive flag slapped on the front? Or are they going to really stand with us? And so this church has been really healing, because there's always that affirmation that yes, we are going to stand with you, and this is something that is important. And so I just wanted to speak to that the layers of religious trauma are so thick that even coming to something like this, it's like, yes, I feel affirmed, and is it safe?
Yeah.
Like, trauma is so thick and layered.
Great point.
I just first want to just say welcome. There's so many people here I haven't met, and I love that. And I've been sitting probably in this chair in this room for 40 years, 30-some years, and was here in the early 90s in the time of Amendment 2, and when, you know, Jim and Nancy and Steve are on the Bill Moyers segment talking about, you know, inclusion of people. And I just want to thank you for this next chapter in our journey, which is long, fraught, sincere, you know, messy and whole. And I can't wait to see the film.
Actually, yes, Bill Moyers. Mine is gonna look so much better.
Oh.
I was actually saying my cinematographer, and he was like, show me again, Bill Moyers thing. And we were looking at the film, and he was like, oh, you're looking so much better. Because we are in conversation with that film. And our story is like a bit different. We're not just putting them face to face and having them debate one another. As an anthropologist, I'm grounding it in people's experiences, right? So I don't care what evangelicals are saying and what are their intentions. You know that now, when we talk about justice, we say effects are important, not the intentions. They might say, we love everyone. Everyone belongs. God loves everyone. And I'm like, yeah, but the effects of your actions, that is what counts. That is what is most important. So.
Hey, I'd just like to mention, sorry.
No, that's right. Last question.
Metropolitan Community Church was really strong in the gay rights movement, and a lot of times they are overlooked. I mean, Bill Moyers didn't talk about UCCS at all, and I think they started in 1969. It'd be worth having a